Hi, everyone. My name is Katka, Reszke, and I'm the director of the ReelAbililities Film Festival, which is presented by Boston Jewish Film. Welcome to day 3 of our online festival, where we share with you some of the best film work from the disabilities community during this time of global disquiet. Thank you for tuning in. I want to acknowledge our co-sponsors and community partners for tonight's special pre-premiere screening of Code of the Freaks. And they are the Ruderman Family Foundation, Cambridge Public Library, Boston Women's Film Festival, Mayor's Commission for Persons with Disabilities at the City of Boston, as well as the Cambridge Commission for Persons with Disabilities, with a special shout out to Kate Thurman for her incredible work and support on this event. And now let me welcome our guests tonight. We have with us the director and co-writer of Code of the Freaks, Salome Chasnoff. Also with us, one of the film's subjects and co-writers, Susan Nussbaum. And moderating tonight as guest moderator, program officer, and Universal Participation Initiative at Mass Cultural Council, Charles Baldwin. Hi, everyone.
Delighted to be here. Thank you.
Thanks for being here.
So, do we kick it right off? It was an amazing film, and so thankful for ReelAbililities for getting this online so that it wasn't part of that long list of things we've seen either canceled or postponed. And a huge shout out to you, Katka, and the Boston Jewish Film for making this happen. And with gratitude for Salome and Susan for being here tonight. Since in our own digital worlds, Salome, Susan, do you want to give like a little shout out? I think I described it as the elevator pitch of bios to get us started on who you two are.
Okay, well, I'm going to let Susan, of course, introduce herself, but I'm a filmmaker, an installation artist, and I also teach at the School of the Art Institute, and I'm also an activist of a range of sorts. I'm a member of the P.O. Box Collective, which is a Chicago-based social practice center that is focused in supporting community, and we're especially needed now when community is under attack.
Thank you. Susan.
And I'm Susan, and I'm a writer mostly, and have written plays and a novel, and I think that's enough. I can't think of else. And,
well, it'll come out in our conversation, just who you are and how fabulous you are. Briefly, I just want to sort of recognize that we could get lost in all the reviews of movies that haven't been part of Code of the Freaks. We could get lost in language, but I really want us to sort of just have this candid, bold conversation, because I think the movie that you two have made, and with the involvement of both candid and bold. So in that light, was there an aha moment where you were just like, I can't stand it anymore, I have to tell a bigger story?
I think that's Susan's story.
Susan, that aha moment.
It wasn't really aha. It wasn't very aha. When I was a young woman, I was injured and became disabled. And I remember very clearly, I didn't have any friends with disabilities, and I certainly didn't know anything about disabilities or how to have one. And all I could think about while I was in the hospital was movies I'd seen. And I went through my mental list of movies like Hunchback of Notre Dame and Whatever Happened to Baby Jane. And there was a long list of very old movies which I was into. And I'm still into movies a lot, and always think about things in terms of that. And many years went by after that. I joined the disability rights movement, and that led to many other things. But one day, about 30 years later, I think, I got this idea to string together some little snippets from all sorts of different movies with a disabled character. And it was, just appalling, these representations. And someone suggested that I make a real movie, but of course I don't know how to make a movie. So I went to my friend Salome, and she said, okay, yes, you should do this. And then we went to Carrie Sandall and Ali Chovis and Pat Savis, and we made the movie. It only took about 10, 12 years.
So
I feel better.
So it was just over time, again, as a movie lover, you've mentioned you're a writer. Either of you, when did you see Freaks, the movie that sort of launches your title and some of the concepts in the movie about community?
I'm wondering, Charles, before we go there's a little bit more about the story that Susan was telling that I would like to add, which is, how we started was we, as Susan, we strung together clips that featured characters with disabilities, but they were organized around themes like blind men and women, or, kill them or cure them, or, intellectually disabled characters, and then we would just focus a screening on a particular theme, and we would do it in community-based settings all over Chicago. The audiences were, all kinds of abilities and disabilities, and, intergenerational and multicultural in every way. And we would show these montages and film the audience discussion. And for us, it was arts-based research. We were trying to get a pulse on what was happening in typical community audiences. And also, we didn't realize at first we were building audience ultimately for our movie. But what really propelled us to spend the next 13 years of our life, I kid you not, making this movie, is that we really got in touch with what people didn't know and about these cliches and stereotypes, and also how they affected them in their everyday lives. And so it wasn't just, oh, this is interesting to us. We'd like to explore it for a really long time. It was also, we kind of felt an educational obligation to raise the subject.
See, I love that, actually. When we were talking the other day, the nature of building this movie out of salons and discussions with the community. And I hadn't realized that you had been sort of gathering clips already, sort of based on a disability lens, whether you're blind or you've got a cognitive disability.
We also did things like, magical disabled characters and African-American disabled men, because we couldn't find any disabled African-American women characters in films, really. So anyway, we did a lot of various things by choosing.
Since you were breaking it up that way, did you find that certain, what is described in the film as tropes, those shorthand, whether the fool, the mystic, the innocent, the monster, did certain of these tropes align with distinct disabilities?
Well, certainly the blind characters.
Yeah, I noticed that in the film, right? The blindness came with sort of this illicit, full innocent kind of fact. And I was curious about, as you were creating these salons, and Salome, you mentioned groups of people, community. Is your circle and your community sort of fueled by a level of activism, of wanting things to change?
Well, Susan, go ahead.
Well, the places we went, and the first time we were trying out the idea was at Access Living, which I worked at the time, and it's a CIL in Chicago, and
Center for Independent Living.
Center for Independent Living, and also when we went to visit or speak at various places, they were generally colleges. We once went to the Jane Addams Center, which was extremely progressive. And do you remember any others?
Victory Gardens.
We went to a theater. So we had different audiences along the way, and yet they were people that were, we thought, likely to figure out the idea of the film and really like it, or at least have a stake in it, especially the disabled people in the audience.
Do you find that audiences are still surprised by some of these representations?
Yeah, I want to say, I showed work in progress in one of my classes, and there's at the same time, there's that same class is taught by another. And so there were 2 classrooms of grad students and another professor, and I thought they were all pretty knowledgeable about issues of representation and definitely social justice issues, and they were totally surprised. They just had never really thought about these things. So I also think so. There's a couple things going on. There's not just how much experience you have with representation, but it's also how experienced you are with disability issues. And if people aren't disabled or don't have disabled people close to them in their lives, they could really be out to lunch about a lot of these issues. They're not like, yet having lunch.
When I was rewatching the film actually today, it was when the character of Al Pacino in the movie says, "I'm in the dark here." I was imagining all of these poor people out there thinking, "We're in the dark here." People don't understand unless you explain to them what is wrong about the representation of characters with disabilities in Hollywood. And that is what your film is doing. And I think that that's what's so groundbreaking about it. And no other film has done it before, really. That's
not for disabled people, is it?
No.
Not through the disability lens like that, no. And what I really like, and I have to say, I can't remember everyone. You have marvelous people speaking in the movie. But there was one of the gentlemen talks about how, like the fairy tale, happily ever after, the resolution of the movie, that our lives, and that is people with, without, across the spectrum, are messy and do have frayed edges. And so if we look to the future, what do we want from our stories? The messiness and the frayed edges. How do you feel about humor? I mean, the Farrelly brothers came up, and some of the folks enjoyed the Farrelly brothers movies.
I tend to feel the way Mike Irvin, one of our interviewees, expressed his response was, when you're laughing with the character rather than at the character, it's a space for kind of opening for and for like being together in just kind of enjoying something. But it all revolves around whether you're of this, similar heart and mind, or you're kind of isolating the character by laughing at him or her.
I don't like the Farrelly Brothers movies because, I don't like slapstick. I haven't really liked slapstick for 20 or so years. I grew up with Jerry Lewis, and that was problematic. But I don't mind the Farrelly Brothers as much as I mind, as Mike said in the movie, movies where disabled people are begging for someone to kill them.
And the Farrelly Brothers recently awarded an award for including people, people with disabilities in their films. I
think that's
for this.
I think that's interesting. Just even in Salome and Susan's different approaches, is that it doesn't seem that the can I still enjoy might be a reaction from some people.
Yeah.
Can I still enjoy this movie? And we also need to recognize, people are where they are. Some people like slapstick. I'm actually with you, Susan. It's not my thing. Just I had the Three Stooges, never liked them. But this idea of
Stooges.
Yeah.
Violence. That's my thing. I hate that.
Yeah, there's something about them that I think is wrong for what disabled people need in terms of what kind of movies need to be out there about disabled people. And I think,
that I agree with.
as we also said in the movie, that I just cannot imagine a movie that I like because they're all with a disabled character, because they are all the same. On a certain level, they're all the same. And I think that comes from who owns the movie industry and that it is a business. And when they find a formula that works, particularly about a population of people that they don't understand, not even a little bit, do they get where we're coming from? And I'm sure there are people who may be listening that would think that's kind of arrogant of me to assume that that's the case. But
I think that isn't that part of the fight to try and include people with disabilities in the casting business, as in, to cast people with disabilities in actual roles in Hollywood. That this is also part of, the Ruderman Family Foundation's work and other activists out in Hollywood. Oh yeah, no, this is tough. This is tough work, and not many films are being made. But isn't that where we should, focus some of the energy? It's a question for you.
I don't know, because to me, it needs to all be torn apart, thrown away, and so that we can see for the first time, maybe, a movie about real disabled people. And I think that movie has to come from real disabled people,
right,
with all different kinds of disabled people. And it needs to be written in a way that is realistic. None of these films show disabled people talking in a way that I've ever heard one of us talk. In fact, most of these movies only have one disabled character. So really, you can't ever have a conversation like you're talking to someone on the phone who's your really great friend and you're telling them something that is personal. No, you don't get that in movies because there's only that one disabled character, and that's the character, and there's only one because the whole movie spins off of the disabled character who may die in the end, or who may be institutionalized in the end, maybe, married in the end, and
or will inspire the non-disabled person to do something. But we have a question from our
let me just add something to that, and then I can go to the questions. But I think also it's because these movies, most Hollywood movies, the implied audience is the able-bodied white viewer. So,
right.
I mean, that's
the implied audience, but that's also who's making the movies.
Yeah.
Or at least who has the money.
So we have questions. I see them.
Yeah, there were two, and there's
a question from Johnny for Salome and Susan. How did you come by your subjects? You got amazing people to speak to issues of representation.
Well, most of them are our friends. I think they're all our friends.
That is one way to come by your subject.
Well, and again, this touches upon the circles that you're in, activist circles. I mean, you hinted upon that, really, both of you in your bullet point bios.
Well, we were very interested in having the disabled voice be centered in the movie. We weren't interested in having celebrities because they're celebrities or anything like that. We wanted people that were in some version of crypt community, crypt culture, but from different perspectives. So we had writers, we had scholars, filmmakers, diverse from the kind of métier perspective or like what they do, but had a critical view.
Well, and I think that's what we think about when we want Hollywood or the popular media to respond. We want all those rich, wonderful people you were talking to have sort of roles in the creation of these stories. If not them, but others.
Well, yeah, control. Yeah.
Ready for another question from our viewers? How do you see this film fitting into the context of films like Celluloid Closet and the new Disclosure, Trans Lives on Screen? And what is your hope for the reception of your film?
Well, I hope people will see, or at least have a glimmer of, how responsible the movies are and all of the imagery that's out there about disabled people because of these films, and how damaging it is, not just to the way we're seen by the non-disabled public, but to us, because I used to feel like I had, the first movie I saw that I liked with disabled people was a documentary, and it was called Murder Ball. And it was the first time I remember thinking, I went to see it alone, and I was, rolling down the sidewalk afterwards, and I thought, God, I didn't have to, hang my head in shame and, put a bag over my head after I left, if for fear that someone would say, oh, we liked that movie about,
I think also in terms of like Celluloid Closet and Disclosure, in terms of like academic writing, there's a history of media studies, film criticism that looks through different perspectives. But before and since Celluloid Closet, there haven't been movies, documentaries about it. There have been a couple that I think were failed because they were more like celebration than critique. But I think this is obviously a new impulse that's, although ours, I have to say, is not so new, 13 years. It just took us a while to reach our public.
But it's almost like it couldn't have been made before then. I mean, the movement around activism, the movement getting folks into positions of leadership, this has taken us a little while. But I going back to that question, it's the idea of what do we hope the outcomes of this movie? What do you want to change in the viewer or in the young artist with a disability watching this movie?
You know, I was looking at the little questions popping up on the screen. I sort of missed what you were saying.
Well, the idea of, we've watched the movie. What do you want the viewer, what do you want to change in the viewer? And what about the artist with a disability who sees this? And what does he, she, or they change?
I can answer the first part, which is what I would like is for this to be a conversation. These stereotypes are so normalized, they become invisible. It's just take them for granted. And when people complain, it's like, oh, you're just complaining. You're just that kind of person. So we want to unconceal the kind of unconscious processes that are shaping how we look at each other and how we live our lives. And I think that's, and I think we want also to give viewers that sense this but don't really have language for it. We want to provide critical tools so that see something, you can go, I see that. I saw what happened. I heard what you said. Instead of just letting it wash over them because they don't really have the tools yet to recognize it, identify it, and address it.
And
we have a really interesting question from Kate. I love that you wanted actually disabled folks in the film, but have you gotten any feedback from non-disabled actors who played any of the disabled characters in the film? Curious if those actors have seen the film and will be more likely to turn down such a role.
That's a meaty question.
Yeah.
I don't think that actors who have played these roles would really like this discovery, and so that we are not grateful consumers of what they participated in.
It kind of cut off the Oscar gravy train.
Well, I mean, I want to disagree with you on. I don't think you're giving credit to all of them. I mean, we know for a fact that Bryan Cranston has actually been outspoken about wanting to from now on, actually, turn down these roles, and he has been, and he played the upside, and played it beautifully, but hello, I mean, that's not, what he should have done. That's not what, he's a great actor. He just should not have taken that role on, obviously.
Well,
and then he obviously had great conversations with someone, probably multitudes of people who, spoke their mind, and he is now advocating for authentic representation in Hollywood. So I don't know about other people, some of those older films, but The Upside is a fairly new film. We're talking within the last couple of years. Right?
Last 2 years.
Yeah.
But are we talking about authentic representation or authentic opportunities, equitable opportunities? I would like to see actors with disabilities play a role that isn't about their disability.
Sure. This
just
is
their humanity.
Yeah, Bryan Cranston's example was about authentic representation, obviously, because that role could have very clearly been played by an actor with a disability.
Because I haven't seen the movie, but he didn't rise from the bed at the end of the movie. Cured.
The original movie is French, and it's very charming, but you can't let yourself be lured into that sentimentalism. No. And it obscures what the movie is really telling you. And it's also very manipulative around race. I mean, it's just, we're all friends and stuff like that. It's a complicated relationship between a disabled person who is white and a personal assistant who is not, is a person of color. And that's a whole different story. There is no story like that story. So it seemed like it did so well in France. Let's make it again, right?
Well, that does speak to Hollywood taking a lot of shortcuts. Whether it's the shortcut in a role, shortcut in a character. But in thinking about this, and now I can't remember if it was Salome or Susan, when you mentioned that you couldn't find any characters who were women with disabilities and women of color. That you found men of color, but no
black
women. Yeah.
We didn't look, there wasn't a critical mass of disabled people of color outside of African American men. We looked in a lot of different areas, but particularly we really struggled to find an African American woman, disabled woman in a movie. We couldn't find one.
I mean, it touches on, sometimes I like to remind people in my business that the disability movement isn't all white and middle class.
Susan, I just saw a question. I just saw
the Tropic of Thunder question.
Yeah, I do remember we went around the block about Tropic of Thunder for a really long time. What was the issue? We found it so offensive that it was just like, well, I can't remember. It was a few years ago.
The issue for me, it was, there was an African-American guy who, I know, Robert Downey Jr. was playing
a white guy playing,
yeah.
And so he could get the role right or something like that. Ugh. And there was an actual African-American actor playing another role that made merciless fun of this white guy in blackface, and really critiqued in the context of the movie the whole thing about blackface. Whereas the disabled character, or the actor who played the disabled, he was an actor pretending to be disabled. Is that right?
Okay.
There was no character in there critiquing that whole trope. You know, how actors who don't have disabilities go around thinking that they can not only use mannerisms and speech that in their minds totally reminds people of intellectually disabled folks. And in fact, we've seen that most of these actors base their performances on, and, get ready, other actors who have also performed those, and every time they each get bigger and bigger and more phony and more ridiculous and less like actual people with intellectual disabilities. That people just, because of that, no one has a clue about the great what a real person with an intellectual disability might be like. I mean, there's a million different kinds of ways that people.
Well, and that's it right there.
Are,
a million different kinds of ways.
There is, I remember we found this YouTube video of, I can't remember the actor's name, the one that played the disabled character in Something About Mary. And he was he did this, he bold, proudly posted this YouTube video of like getting into character and how he, adapted all these mannerisms and to make him look more and more and more disabled. It was so gross and was, frankly, just like a terrible insult.
Well, I do think we're seeing more artists, filmmakers, practitioners of media with disabilities, particularly now with so many things being able to be made at home, on the phone. But we do seem to see some folks rising in this world. So in that with that promise, with that idea, what hope for, let's say, in 5 years' time? Where would you like to see the movement or the movies or popular media at that point?
I'd like to see the first real movie made by disabled people, particularly written by disabled people, produced, directed, and performed by, and whatever that movie might be about. But I'd like it to be the real thing.
Mm-hmm.
I like that. Salome, where would you like to see this sort of movement land in Hollywood in 5 years?
Well, I don't know. I'm kind of thinking about this pandemic that we're living in right now, and it's going to have a terrible impact on filmmaking, I think, particularly documentary filmmaking, where most documentary filmmakers before all this were living on the edge, years and years of unpaid labor to make movies like this, really, struggling for grants, trying to convince funders that, enough resources, the value of your project. And if you're at all ahead of the curve, forget it. So, I mean, that's just, that was the situation before all this. And now with the loss of the jobs that support filmmakers so that they can afford to make movies like freelance work, et cetera, kind of disappearing. I think it's going to take quite a while and also for kind of emerging filmmakers of narrative film. It's going to take people to come back. So that's one thing. And in terms of Hollywood, it's a mystery to me how this is going to redound. I do think that given, for example, the Bryan Cranston example, I do think, and then Quiet Place, I do think there are little inroads, but I mean, I have a call into Daniel Day-Lewis. I want to hear what he thinks about it, but I'm kidding. I think it's going to be hard for actors to give up these plum roles.
I think so. Take the call. I think you should.
Okay, I'm going to give it a go. But Chained for Life, I thought was a really good movie. I don't know, Susan, did you see it? It's got multiple disabled characters. Yeah, I think it's really, I don't know if the writer and the director are people with disabilities. I actually don't know, but it's a riot. So, I mean, I do think, and I think television is a kind of a frontier. You see a lot more going on in TV because there's just so much more stuff. And if it doesn't work out, okay, we try something else. So I do think more, TV has proved to be a bit of a frontier in this way. So it's yet to be seen. I just hope I'm here.
I hope you're here. I hope you're both here. Certainly. And I think that idea of television and the sort of the nimble quality of production and the ability for things to be made by the individual seems to be really there. And there's so many different platforms now, from Netflix to, well, that's all I have. But anyway, I know there are many other platforms.
I see Susan looking at that question. Do you want to take it on, that last question that we have there? Do you have any media projects, independent film that you want to uplift for the representation of people with disabilities?
Independent film, I can't.
Anything, independent web-based film. I mean, that's what we're talking about right now. Do we want to give people something that we would, recommend?
Yeah, I'm sure there's some really interesting stuff going on in independent and web-based films.
But we hate this question.
You hate this question.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think I was told not to ask this question. However, locally, again, if we think about Ryan O'Connell, who's made special, Ryan Haddad, who was in the, that Ben Platt television program. Ryan Haddad is hilarious. Alexander Freeman, who's local, who's making films. So part of it, in the answer to the person who asked, is to pay attention to some of the short films that ReelAbilities is showing and who makes them.
Some of the feature lengths as well.
Amplify those things, amplify those voices. Because particularly right now, and we want to honor this moment right now, if we're all staying at home, what are the opportunities to put forward and amplify otherwise marginalized voices?
And if you don't have the equipment to make a movie, start writing. God, we need writers. Fiction writers.
That's the truth. That is the truth.
Screenplay writers, and just elbow your way in whatever way you have to do.
I would also encourage educators, people that are either teaching film departments or any kind of art department, to encourage your students. Don't lock the door on them. Don't send them to, oh, this filmmaking class isn't for you because you're blind. Let them in, see what happens.
Well, and in response to everything going online, I know many folks with various disabilities who are kind of like, told you, see how easy this can be? So this also might become an opportunity to diversify the student body in a truly intentional manner.
Mm-hmm.
Since we are in Boston.
Yeah.
Folks,
or Greater Boston.
We have to wrap up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I also thank you. I just want to tell everybody that ReelAbilities runs through April 2nd. So be with us. Register for all films and any of the films that you want to see. We're back tomorrow night with To Be of Service, a documentary about beautiful service dogs that are helping veterans with post-traumatic stress. We will have Sylvia Bowersox with us online for the discussion with her service dog, Timothy. We're looking forward to that. Otherwise, stay at home, be safe, be good to yourselves and each other. Please donate if you can. Fill out our survey. Thank you so much to our guests tonight.
Thank you. And
thank you so much.
In solidarity, everybody, stay healthy.
Thank you both so much.
Power to the people.
Thank you.
Power to the people, right?
Bye-bye.